Um, what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about drawing with pens rather than with an iPad like Procreate or a Cintiq, whatever you're using. The reason I want to do that is because there's a strength in line quality that comes from working with pens. Now, uh, there are different kinds of tools you can use for this. One thing that I like to use is this kind of a dip pen, as you can see right here. Now, this pen has this has like a spring attached to the inside of it, which is there to basically hold ink. So the ink is kind of held in this little space here. Um, the other tool I want to use is just simply a microliner type of a pen like this. And what I want to do is I want to go and share screen and show you how to what I do with these tools. So what we have here is I've made a little workspace here for myself. So this is the microliner is a beautiful tool, and I use it. Actually, I tend to use this more than I do this other tool I'm going to show you. But the difference between the two is kind of subtle, but in some ways kind of dramatic. So you can see here I'm drawing with this kind of microliner type tool, and it's fine, Now, I've been drawing for many, many years. For me, it's not a big deal to get an okay line out of a tool like this, But if you're just starting out, you owe yourself the experience of working with these dip pens. Essentially, I'll put up you can buy them at art shops. They're just called dip pens. But you can also, there's an online place that you can get really cool ones, which I'll put up. The kind of ink that I usually use is, I happen to not have any black and white, and all I have is a big bottle of it. But it's called, the stuff I use is this stuff, FW, made by Dale Around. And it's a really beautiful, very dense ink. Now, this, it's good to have a little glass of water nearby when you're drawing with these things, and a wet cloth, okay? Another thing that's useful to have is when you're using these pens a lot, is you tend to have to kind of sand them down with a knife to get the old ink off, because ink builds up on the pens, right? Anyway, so there we are. So these pens. So comparing this drawing to let's say I'm doing this one again. So I'll do it, and immediately you notice that there's a kind of difference in width of the line, right? You see that in certain areas it'll be thicker than in other areas. That's because the pen actually, when you're pressing down on it, will actually widen. You can actually get a varying line by just adding pressure to it. So that's it right there. And the other thing you can do with this is you can get, depending on the angle that you hold it, if you hold it, if you just do it straight like this, then it's a certain kind of line quality. But what I tend to do is I tend to hold it up. I might even draw backwards or upside down with it, right, like that, or against the nib like this. So you get kind of a shaky line. Okay, so already you notice that there's a much more expressive quality to the line of a dip pen, right? So this is essentially that drawing redone with a dip pen, right? You can see the stuff, and here's that one here. Now, see how the line is changing, yeah? Now, if you look at drawings by for instance, Ralph Steadman, whose work I'll try to put up on screen so you can see that. That stuff is all done with dip pens, right? And if you look at old, drawings from, old Flemish drawings or any kind of drawing really from prior to the last 40 years, were pretty much done with these pens. In fact, these pens were used. This is how your great grandparents worked, unless you were, unless you're Chinese. In which case they would have worked with, dip brushes. But it's the same thing. So even when I was going to school, and I'm old, but I'm not that old. I'm old. I'm very old. But the thing is that when I was going to school, when you did math homework, you were required to do. There's two types of math homework. You did it in pencil. You did the math equations in pencil, and then you did them in ink. But the ink wouldn't be a dip pen. It would be like a ballpoint pen. But it's sort of a hangover from the old tradition of school, which was that you would sit at your desk and you would have a table with a hole in it, and this would go into that. And this is called the ink well, right? This is where the ink is. And you would be required to be really neat and have like really good kind of discipline around how you use the ink well. Anyway, so your great grandparents and your great great grandparents, that's how if they went to school in the West, that's how they learned. Anyway, so this pen also, you'll recognize something about it, which is that it is what is used for handwriting, especially something that's called calligraphy. Calligraphy is basically the art of writing. So in Chinese, it's calligraphy, and in English, it's also called calligraphy, which is the beauty and the shape of letters. So, for instance, this is a copper script type of writing, which to do that you really need to have these pens, because you need the width and the variance of line width, right? So you can see the expressiveness of the line. And the only way you can do that is because you are using a dip pen. Nowadays, of course, you can use a Wacom tablet or a pen from an Apple pen, and you can mimic this kind of width and texture in line. But the fact remains that even when you do that, there's a kind of coldness to the result when you're using a Wacom, and that's just a fact. I don't think that any person studying in this school will be able to deny that. So I highly recommend that we work with these tools, at least that we try to work with them a little bit. Okay. Now later I'll do some lessons where there is we're using colored inks, for instance. Now I wanted to show you this actually, because it can get pretty wild, the kind of line that you get from these. This pen is bought from that place I told you I'm going to put a link up to. And as you notice, it's as opposed to being a 1-point pen, it's a 2-point pen. So it has two lines at once, which is sounds crazy, right? But actually, it works really well as a drawing tool. You can see right there. You see how it's working. And this is I actually, I once in a while I make children's books, and my most recent kids book, which is published in Norway, was entirely done using this tool. Um, so I'm really into this. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to drawing. A little, you know, I'm really into the different types of stuff you can draw with. This is a this is what's called, I think it's sold as, it's called a jiggle writer, but it's sold like this. Let's see if I can find the real one. Yeah, there it is. Squiggle Wiggle Writer. And it's sold on Amazon. And the idea behind it is that you basically draw squiggles. It's for little kids, right? So I took that thing apart and I attached a nib to it, as you can see. Now I'll wet the nib a little bit before I use it, and I might even like sand down or scrape down the nib so it can take the ink. And then I will put some ink on it. So I kind of started using this a long, long time ago, and it's a way of kind of like getting away from my own very personal way of drawing and kind of handing over the line quality to a machine, which I quite like also. As I said, I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to drawing, and this is one of my more deep discoveries inside drawing with a pen. Let's see here, we can get a little closer. Yeah, get a little closer, see what I got. Now, so let's say for instance, we're doing, you know, we're doing a drawing of a man's head right there. Give him some eyes. Give him a head inside a head, just so it has a kind of conceptual angle. Now, I'll move out a little bit so we can see it. So as you can tell, it doesn't really require a whole lot more than that in terms of being a drawing. This thing is really good to draw beards. So I don't know. It's just I really like this thing. I actually use this kind of idea of automatic kind of machine drawing. I use it in my illustration, but I also use it because I do a lot of stuff. I don't just do illustration. I also do printmaking and like painting. So I use it in all different aspects of my work. And like if I'm doing etching, I might use this as a way to mark the plate. Now I want to show you something which is the use of color, different colors with the black line. Let's see, hang on a sec. Get all my stuff right here. Yeah, so I said it's good to have like water nearby and all that stuff, and so I tend to use I'll use different colored inks. That's what I've always loved to do that. Look at that nice mistake. See that big pool of blood? I said blood. It's a pool of ink, right? That's okay. We can deal with it. We can deal with it. So the way that I usually deal with it when it pools like that, I just take and I suck it up a little bit with a paper towel, just to get it, because otherwise it'll smear, which in itself is actually not a bad thing. Like the idea of something like you run your hand over something. For instance, if I did for instance there, I can go like that. And it looks like he's been punched in the face, right? Anyway, so this is kind of like the just a combination of a few colors can really help a drawing, right? Now, when I say a few colors, I mean that a person could actually draw a lot of color, you know, like densely cover the drawing in color. But the most, like the idea of having less color, a few selected colors, is pretty rich when you're drawing. And that goes for not just ink drawing, it goes for painting also, is that the idea of limiting the range of colors, so you're not really going rainbow as much as you're going, you know, simple. You can work it up to something more than that, right? That's a piece of advice that I'll give to almost anybody. Now, what I usually do when I work is I have a hairdryer nearby, which I have now, but if I run it, it'll drown out my voice, which might be a good thing, but so I'm going to stay away from the hairdryer. But normally I would take this now and hairdry it. Another thing you can do, or what I tend to do is I might use pencils, colored pencils. So in this case, I'm using the black, I'm using the red ink, and then I'm just going in there and I'm kind of in a very subtle way, giving it a little bit of a tone with colored pencils. Now, this can be done in many different ways. This happens to be my method of working, right? But that's a way of kind of like pushing the drawing to a state where it sort of is semi-finished, right? So there it is. There it is. Might get this guy, maybe this guy a little bit green. And that is a way to work with drawing. Now, I will try to show some images of people who work with inks and watercolor and colored pencils for your reference. And I think that we will be working on a project that is going to be specifically about using pens. That's it for me. I mean, I think that's it for the demo of pens. I want to encourage you guys to experiment as much as possible when you're drawing. I want to see things come out of you that is that has a quality of somebody on an exploration, basically, like playing around and exploring. So what I'm showing you are my personal little wanderings into the world of drawing. And I would like it if I could see you guys exploring your own territories of drawing. Not necessarily mine, but I would like you to try to use dip pens rather than just jumping into Wacom tablets.